Okay, so unexpected handheld camera open here. I started this video maybe about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I knew I wanted to talk about this and just started working, and it happened that Palworld was getting released at around the same time. With the headlines that I am seeing regarding Palworld, I'm not going to say they've done anything wrong yet, but the fact that the developer says that they went to like a Nintendo developer convention and Nintendo encouraged everybody to like develop new ideas, and their attitude was like, why not just take what works and jam it into a game and sell millions of copies? The fact that the developer has used AI in the past in differing ways and has talked about how good a job AI has done, even compared to their regular staff, the people they go to for ideas. And then just the fact that there are body models in Palworld that are the same ratio in size to some of the body models of Pokemon that have appeared in the 3D games. It all just feels like stuff isn't 100% here. And as that conversation gets going, wherever it goes, who knows, Palworld might be in the right here. I am not going to say they aren't, but they are going to be used to start this conversation of how shouldn't you use AI in projects. And this whole idea I was working on went the reverse way of what is the right way to have this content in projects. So I'm going to cut back to my better edited and scripted video now, and please, I hope you enjoy and truly think about what I say, especially in context to the whole Palworld situation right now. Thank you, and I'll see you in the video. Hi, I'm Clifton Church. Have you heard that AI is unethical? I mean, I just saw capitalism try to push NFTs on consumers, and that burned like the dumpster fire it deserved to be. So, isn't it just as likely that this AI boom is the same sort of thing? The thing is, based on what I've seen from the major AAA video game companies, that's exactly what they intend to do. They intend to use AI as a shortcut for creativities so they can cut more fat off their bottom line. Sure, that means there won't be any jobs for graphic artists, writers, or anyone with a shred of decency, but C-Suite's gonna do what C-Suite's gonna do. But that doesn't mean you can't use AI ethically. What we're suffering from right now is that one project that does use AI in a way that respects the creative process while still providing an honest product to the consumer. That pillar of idealism that proves that this can be done right instead of just being done cheap. But what does that project look like? What will a project need to be? What will it need to do to use AI ethically? I think I've got a pretty good understanding of that, and I think I've even got a plan. Now, it's not an elegant plan, it's not even something that's going to make good content, but it is content. If you sell this to an audience as something that's going to create nothing more than soap opera stories or the kind of stories that would be made fun of in Mystery Science Theater 3000, you could still make something that's profitable despite the low level of quality. But I can't just start there. We need to first address the elephant in the room. What is ethical in the AI space? In order to understand where in the process generative AI can run into ethics issues, we first need to understand the general way these things work. To very overly simplify things, three things power generative AI: the AI model, its associated training data, and a prompt. Keeping things simple, the AI model is sort of a program that takes a provided prompt and uses overly complex math with training data to make reasonable guesses as to the type of response the prompt is looking to receive. The model only stores the math and interface for taking these inputs in and giving an output to the user. In that way, there is very little in the model itself that can be either ethical or unethical. This leaves only the prompt itself or the training data that can be unethical. Most models are designed to attempt to avoid answering unethical prompts, and the currently established guidelines provided by Valve for AI-powered content on Steam, just as a reference, require those guardrails to exist. Obviously, should someone want to get around them, there will be ways. There always are. But I'm willing to say that anything unethical a user gets out of a generative AI only comes from those trying to be unethical with it. As long as a product designer can prove they made a fair effort to avoid responses outside of expected parameters and try to patch points of egress as they appear, I can respect not putting the blame on them. This leaves just the training data as the main, and already proven worrisome, area where ethics needs to be addressed. Up to this point, many of the available training data packs that are available online come from sources where the content fed into the training software has been used without the consent of the person who posted it. This is already bad enough with text being scraped off the web by bots, but it gets even more complex with images in regards to copyright of art and such. This means that we have seen nothing but unethical examples of training data. We can identify the major issues with what currently has been done, but hopefully we can use that to identify what we would want out of a truly ethical solution. From my perspective, in order to build an ethical library of training data, you must meet 3 criteria. First, the content must be provided consensually. Second, it must be made clear that this data will be used to train an AI, but only within a limited scope. I'd likely tie that scope to a particular project with the possibility of licensing out the content further to other related projects, but that is something that is beyond what I'm looking at here. And finally, the creator of whatever content is supplied must be financially reimbursed for their contribution at a level appropriate for the use case at hand. If you can prove that content used to create your training data meets these 3 conditions, I would personally be comfortable considering that data to be ethically sourced. I'm sure I'm going to get opinions on that in the comments, but at least it's something. I'm an individual person. I'm just trying to get us somewhere that's not the wrong place. Now, there are 2 major hurdles for ethically sourced training data under my definition. Getting access to the amount of content needed to create adequate training data is tricky, and it results in data that has a much smaller scope than what we have been able to use up until this point. To address these concerns, allow me to present to you my fantasy project. An AI-driven, tabletop RPG-inspired live service that uses AI to fill in crafted Mad Lib-styled story frameworks and create conversational prompts for traditional conversation tree interactions, as well as support more traditional role-playing activity with open prompt responses by text or voice recognition, but also using traditional game engines to track players' stats, die rolls, health, and all of those mechanical aspects to the traditional tabletop RPG that require consistency and accuracy for battle. My imaginary project uses 3 different AI models for 3 different uses. The first would be a large language model to act as the game host, interacting directly with the player during out-of-combat situations, providing detailed descriptions of locations, points of interest that would further the current storyline, and dialogue trees with NPC characters to give the player the information they need to move forward in their stories. It would interact with the player at whatever level the player wanted. The second AI would be an image generator, taking those detailed descriptions from the large language model and drawing the backdrop for whatever location the player happens to be at. It wouldn't be interactive, just a 2D backdrop in front of which you can place 3D models and a static camera to give the illusion of being there, much like you might feel when playing around a table with friends. The final AI would be a voice synthesizer, to give voice to the near infinite number of characters you might interact with in an experience like this. Let's look at each one of these individually, to see what it would take to make training data for each ethically. The biggest challenge is the large language model AI. In order to accomplish what I am imagining, it would need to meet 3 criteria. This is... how many times have I had 2 or 3 things? Okay. First, be able to casually communicate with the player at a basic level, so it can interpret what the player wants to do and act on it accordingly. Secondly, it needs to act as the host of the story, and therefore needs to be trained to understand how this role is played by real people in real-world situations. Finally, it needs to be able to speak in the voice of any non-player character the player may come across, taking into account their race, and whatever baggage comes with it historically, economic class, job they are doing in the world, and so on. In order to complete this, I imagine a situation where there's a library of training data for the host side that includes simple communication and storytelling training, and another collection of libraries for each of the different races in the universe. I hope you already recognize that this would be an undertaking, but I think the scale at which content is needed to adequately train each of these groups is significant. The easier one is the host data, as the majority of that can be licensed through ChatGPT or whatever Google is calling the business licensing side of Google Bard, whatever that is. Those can be licensed to get the host communicating with the player. But the storytelling side is best trained through more real-world data. To do that ethically would requiring hosting at least tens of dozens of tabletop RPG sessions so that the transcript could then be fed into the training program so that the AI can start seeing the patterns in wording and delivery used by these game hosts and replicate that style. It might even be valuable to reach out to the tabletop role-playing game community in general, offering like $50 an hour of audio recordings from game sessions to get a wider variety of hosts and their respective styles, as well as bulking up the amount of training data to work from in such a niche. But then, there's the individual race data. If the game theorist has taught us anything, it's the value of lore. I think this is the key to leveraging large language model AI in creative works, in creative ways. In order to create one race's training data, I would basically commission books upon books to be written in the style of each race's tongue, chronicling the story, the history of their race in the world for centuries, if not millennia, with formal writings and journals from every economic class, tellings of wars fought with other races from the commanders all the way down to the frontline soldiers, with their letters back to family and such documented in historical tomes for wars that never happened. I'm not talking Elder Scrolls 10-page books to fill shelves either. I'm talking books with hundreds of pages, documenting the life of a people, establishing who they are and why they are. These characters written in these books that the player will never see because of the way these models work will become the inspiration for the race at a deep level and help give these artificially created characters at least some sort of reason for their actions. But think about how much writing that actually is. I'm talking about each race getting easily 20 plus books. On the low end, significantly low. I think I missed by like 2 orders of magnitude. I distracted myself. But anyway, I'm talking about each race getting tons of books written from their perspective. Each book being of significant length, more than 100 pages, but I wouldn't expect War and Peace. And how many races do you expect in a medieval or science fiction fantasy world? At least 3? Maybe 5? More? I'm talking about what would easily be tens of thousands of pages of background in a fantasy world that isn't immediately intended for sale to the customer. The cost of building out a writing team to manage that is likely to be equal to, if not greater than, a project with a tailored creative story. And this amount of training data is still not going to be adequate to train an actual model and expect worthwhile output. But even still, I'm hopeful that this helps contextualize what will be needed to properly train a consumer-facing AI tool, and the fact that this will require just as many, if not more, writing staff for AI training projects. And again, this was only for the large language model. I still intend to have an image-generating AI and voice synthesis. Fortunately, those are a bit more direct. For the image generation, I would have a 2D art team decide on a single visual aesthetic and then just create as many vast and varying locations that an adventure might take place in within that aesthetic style. Just give them the freedom to make as much as possible, and everything and anything that might be worthwhile that they think would be, I don't know. That trailed off. But again, you need a lot of art to train an image model. And sure, it's all going to be a single aesthetic, and that's all you want it to output, but that still requires a vast array of content within that subset of style. The voice synthesis is as easy as getting a few dozen voice actors to come in and do a few general lines in one character's voice, and then do a different character from another race with other vocal inflections, so that each of these pockets can then be used to create different characters as the need arises. And again, everyone will know what they're signing up for up front, and will be properly compensated for it, what everybody agrees is fair for the job being done. But the work is going to be slightly different from what some people may be accustomed to. That's what happens as technology changes. So do the jobs. Now, I have only talked about what the AI side of this project would entail. There is also an entirely separate game engine that would handle battle encounters along with some other bookkeeping. I'm still holding on to that a bit just in case somebody is genuinely intrigued by this idea. One can hope, right? Anyway, to bring this back around, I hope that I've at least given you a shred of hope that even though those who may lead the industries are looking to take advantage of AI, there is a window of opportunity for this to be used creatively without being completely bankrupt of ethics. I acknowledge and respect the concerns so many have regarding this tech based on how it's currently being used, but I refuse to abandon hope that we can't find a way to use this ethically. Besides, this is about 1/3 of the holodeck puzzle, and I'd hate to lose that now. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Again, I'm Clifton Church, and I hope you found something of interest here. I'd love to hear what you found most interesting of all of this blabbing, and let me know if it's at least broadened your perspective on generative AI. If you'd offer me a like and a sub, I'd appreciate it. I want to be doing things like this more frequently, and the external encouragement will definitely help. I should probably set up a Patreon if what I'm looking for is external encouragement. But we'll see if I get around to that. But yeah, thanks again, and you have a good day.